The night sky above Von Prime burned. With streaks of plasma fire, Ralvik crouched behind a broken wall, his breathing heavy through his respirator. The Kryathi soldier had been fighting for 3 days straight, and exhaustion pulled at every muscle in his forearmed body. Around him, his squad members checked their weapons and tried to rest before the next assault. Tell us a story, Ralvik, one of the younger soldiers said. Something to take our minds off this mess. Ravik looked across the ruins of what had once been a farming settlement on the other side of the valley. The Velian Republic forces had dug in just as deeply. This war had been going on for 300 years, longer than anyone could remember. Peace. He nodded slowly and began to speak. Have you heard about the humans? He asked. Several soldiers laughed. The Deathworlders. Those are just stories for children, someone said. Ravik shook his head. My grandfather's grandfather kept records. The humans were real. They came from a world so dangerous that just living there made them into warriors. They had to fight their own planet every day just to survive. Heavy gravity that made their bones like metal, predators that hunted them, diseases that should have killed them but only made them stronger. So where are they now? Another soldier asked mockingly. Gone, RVC said quietly. They expanded too fast into the galaxy. Their colony ships went in every direction. Then something happened. Maybe their home world died. Maybe they just scattered too far, but they vanished. Some say they'll return when the galaxy needs them most. The laughter died down. Even in the middle of a war zone, there was something haunting about the idea of an entire species disappearing into legend. Across the battlefield, Surin stood in her command tent studying tactical displays. The Viosian commander had blue-tinted skin and large eyes adapted for low light. She was reviewing casualty reports when her science officer approached. Commander, we're detecting something unusual in orbit, the officer said. Siren looked up. Another supply ship. No, ma'am, it's a spatial distortion. Like something came out of FTL incorrectly. There's debris. The material composition doesn't match anything in our database. Could it be a Kinathi weapon? The science officer hesitated. The metallurgy is wrong. It's primitive in some ways, advanced in others. Some of the hull fragments have markings in a language we can't identify. Our sir. Anan felt a chill run through her. Keep monitoring it and increase our sensor sweeps of the planet. If something came down from that wreck, I want to know about it. High on a cliff overlooking both military positions, Tammin lay flat on his stomach and watched through his rifle scope. The human sergeant had been observing the alien forces for 6 hours without moving. Behind him, spread out in defensive positions, the rest of his squad waited in silence. This is insane, Ju whispered over their radio channel. We've been lost for 3 days. We don't know where we are, and now we're in the middle of an alien war. Keep quiet and stay sharp, Tammin responded softly. His Korean accent was thick, but his English was clear. All the colony ship crew had learned multiple languages. We need information before we make any moves. Quinn Wu crawled up beside him. I count about 200 fighters on the eastern side, maybe 300 on the western side. Different species, different equipment. They've been shooting at each other on and off all day. Any sign they've detected us? Tammin asked. Nothing yet. But our armor is outdated. If they have Good sensors, they'll find us. Eventually, Tae-min lowered his scope and looked at his squad. 12 humans, all that had survived when their colony's ship's experimental FTL drive malfunctioned. They had emergency supplies, basic weapons, and outdated equipment. Their communications array was damaged, unable to reach Earth or any human colony. For all they knew, they were completely alone. What's the play, Sergeant? Ju asked. She was their medic and the best at languages. If they were going to communicate with anyone, it would be through her. We watch and learn, Tae-min said. Figure out what we're dealing with, then we decide if we make contact or try to stay hidden until we can repair our comms. Minko, their intelligence officer, was studying the tactical situation. They're fighting over this territory, but I don't see any strategic value. No major resources, no key facilities, just farms and settlements. Maybe the whole planet is contested, Han Wu suggested. An explosion lit up the valley below. Plasma fire streamed between the two forces. Tin watched as armored figures exchanged fire across the ruins. It was a stalemate, bloody and pointless. This has been going on a long time, he said quietly. You can tell by how they fight. They're dug in, defensive. Nobody's trying to win anymore. They're just trying not to lose. Trying. As darkness fell completely, Tae-min made his decision. We stay hidden for now. Young-ju and Mo work on the communications equipment. Everyone else rotating watches. We observe for 2 more days, learn their patterns, then we figure out our next move. None. The squad settled for a long night. Below them, the alien armies continued their ancient war, unaware that something from legend was watching them from the shadows. Tae-min took the first watch, his eyes scanning the battlefield. He thought about Ralvik's story, though he couldn't have heard it. Somewhere in his gut he knew that their arrival here was going to change everything. The humans had returned. The galaxy just didn't know it. Yet the morning sun cast long shadows across the wasteland of Warzone Prime. Jung wiped sweat from his forehead and stared at the broken communications array spread across the ground. Human engineer had been working on it for most of the night. How bad is it? Tae-min asked, kneeling clear's throat. Beside him, the main transmitter is fried. We can receive signals, but we can't send anything strong enough to reach the nearest human colony. Best case, we're weeks away from making contact with anyone from home. Jung picked up a damaged circuit board. We need parts we don't have. Tam nodded grimly. Keep working on it. Priority 1 is getting word back to Earth that we're alive. A sudden series of explosions echoed from the valley. Tae-min grabbed his rifle and moved to the cliff edge. Through his scope, he saw something that made his blood run cold. A civilian transport marked with neutral symbols was taking fire from one of the alien forces. The Velian troops were advancing on it, weapons hot. Jiu Hyan Wu Minsu. With me now, Tae-min ordered. The rest of you cover positions. What are we doing? Jai Wu asked as she grabbed her medical pack. Those are civilians down there. We're not sitting here while they get slaughtered. The 4 humans moved down the cliff face with speed that would have shocked any alien observer. Earth's higher gravity had made them strong and fast. What looked like a difficult climb to them would have been nearly impossible for the aliens below. They reached the valley floor in minutes. Hyan Wu took point, his heavy weapon ready. The sounds of plasma fire grew louder through the smoke and dust. They could see the transport on its side, figures trying to crawl away from the wreckage, multiple hostiles 40 m. Mio reported, her eyes scanning the tactical situation. We move fast and hard, Tammin said, Hyan Wu suppressing fire. Mino flank right, Jai Wu with me too. The transport, get those civilians out. Chairman, they moved. Hyan Wu opened fire, and the sound of human weapons cracked through the air, different from the plasma weapons of the aliens, louder, more violent. The valiant soldiers turned in surprise as projectiles tore through their cover. Tammin and Jiu reached the transport. Inside were 3 aliens, 2 adults and 1 child. They had gray skin and large eyes that went wide with terror at seeing the humans. Jai Wu held up her hands, trying to look non-threatening despite being armed. It's okay, she said in Korean, then switched to English, then tried basic hand gestures. We're here to help. Can you move? The alien stared at her. One of them, the female, spoke in a language that sounded like musical chimes. Ju and LT Unk and GT's translation device was damaged, but she caught a few words. Fear, confusion, a question that might have meant, what are you? No time for introductions, Tam said, reaching in to help pull the injured alien out. The male was heavy, but Tam lifted him with both arms. The alien made a sound of shock at being carried so easily. Plasma fire struck near them. Mio returned fire from her flanking position, dropping 2 valiant soldiers. The aliens were organized, but they had never fought anyone like humans before. The speed, the aggression, the raw physical strength, it was all outside their experience. Fall back, Tammin ordered. Get them to cover. They moved toward a collapsed building. Hyan Wu laid down, covering fire, his weapon tearing through the Velgen battle line. More alien soldiers arrived, but now they were hesitant. Something was wrong. These new fighters didn't move like any species they knew. Ralvik's patrol heard the fighting and moved to investigate. The Cryothy soldiers approached from the eastern side of the battlefield. What they saw stopped them in their tracks. 4 figures in strange armor were defending civilians against Velian forces. But these weren't any species Ralvik recognized. They were bipedal, shorter than Krenathi, but taller than Velians. They moved with a fluid grace that seemed impossible. One of them was carrying a full-grown Velian adult in both arms like the alien weighed nothing. Hold fire, Ralph commanded. His mind was racing. Could it be? I need to get closer. I need to get closer. He advanced slowly, his weapons lowered. The fighting was dying down. The Velian forces were pulling back. Confused and disorganized, Ralvik watched as the 4 strangers set up a defensive position around the rescued civilians. Tam Min saw the new aliens approaching, different from the ones they had been fighting. 4 arms instead of 2. Heavier build. He raised his weapon but didn't fire. Sergeant, Ju asked nervously. Wait, Tammin said. Ralvik stopped 20 m away. He looked at the figures before him. 2 armed, dense build armor that seemed primitive but functional, and their faces, when one of them removed their helmet to wipe sweat away, Rivk saw features that made his heart's race. Flat faces, forward-facing eyes, hair growing from their heads exactly like the ancient descriptions. You're human, Ralvik said in his own language. Knowing they Wouldn't understand but needing to say it anyway. Jai Wu and LT Unk and GT's damaged. Translator caught fragments of the word. Human, her eyes went wide. Did he just say human? Rauk switched to basic trade. Language, something most space-faring. Species new fragments of, you human. From Earth, the death world, Jiu stepped forward slowly. She pointed to herself. Human, yes, from Earth, she pointed at. Ralvek, you know, human stories, RV. Said, struggling with the trade. Language, old stories, legends, we. Thought you were myths, we're real, Jiu. Said simply. Ralvek's squad had gathered behind him. They were staring at the humans with a mixture of awe and fear. One of them whispered, the Deathworlders are real. Across the battlefield, Sir Anand received reports from her retreating forces. Unconcounted fighters, incredible physical capabilities, weapons technology that seemed both primitive and effective, and now the Kranasi were making contact with them. Instead of fighting, get me visual data, she commanded. I want to see these fighters for myself. When the images came through, Surin felt her blood chill. She had read the old texts, the histories from before the war. She knew the legends, and looking at these creatures, she recognized them from ancient descriptions that she had always dismissed as fantasy. It can't be, she whispered. But the evidence was right in front of her, the galaxy's most feared warriors. The species that had haunted legends for 3 centuries had just appeared in the middle of her war zone. The temporary camp sat in neutral territory. Between the 2 battle lines, Tae Min had negotiated the space through Jiu and LT Unk and GT's improving communication with Ralvek. It had been 2 days since first contact, and more survivors from the human colony ship had been located. Dawn arrived with the 2nd squad just after dawn. The human squad leader brought 12 more survivors, and more importantly, several crates of salvaged supplies from the crashed ship. She strode into the camp and clasped arms with Tammin. Good to see you alive, Sergeant, she said. With a tired smile, we picked up your beacon and followed it here. Never expected to find you in the middle of an alien war. Good to see you too, Lieutenant, Tammin replied. What's our situation? Jae-sung's equipment upgrades are working. We have partial communications now. I sent a message toward the nearest known colony, but it'll take weeks for a response at minimum. Until then, we're on our own. She looked around the camp where humans, Kennethy, and rescued civilians mixed together. This is quite the situation you've created. We save civilians. It was the right call. I'm not arguing. But now both sides are trying to figure out what to do with us. At that moment, a small group approached the camp. Leading them was a valiant female with scientific equipment and an escort of soldiers. Ralvik moved to intercept them, but Tammin held up a hand. Let them approach. Jai Wu with me. Valiant scientist stopped a respectful distance away. She was thin and moved carefully, her large eyes studying the humans with intense curiosity. When she spoke, it was in careful trade language. I am Thessa, scientist. I request permission to study humans too. Understand, we mean no harm, Jiu. Translated for Tammin, though his trade language was improving. Why should we trust you? Your soldiers shot at civilians. A mistake, Thessa said quickly. Commander Sir Anand has ordered new protocols. No firing on civilians. No firing on humans without direct threat. We wish to understand. 300 years of legends, and now you appear. We must know if you are truly what they stories say. Tay men considered this. What do the stories say? Thessa's eyes seem to shine, that humans come from a death world, that gravity there is twice what most species can survive, that your bones are dense like metal, that you heal from wounds that would kill others, that you can run for days without stopping, that you are the greatest warriors the galaxy has ever known. She paused, but stories become exaggerated. Over time, we need facts, some basic medical scans. Tam decided nothing invasive. Jew will accompany you and monitor everything. Over the next hours, Thessa conducted her research with Jew and LT, UNC and GTS. Careful supervision. Each test seemed to shock the Velian scientist more. Human bone density was 3 times higher than the galactic average. Their muscle fiber was more efficient. Their cardiovascular system could operate at extreme levels that would cause organ failure in most species. Their immune systems were aggressive to the point of being terrifying. This is impossible, Thessa kept saying. How does your species survive childhood? Your own immune system must attack everything. We adapt, you explained. Our world made us tough. If we weren't tough, we died. Simple. Natural selection. Over millions of years, your world must be horrifying. Ju smiled. We call it home. Meanwhile, Sun Ung Ho had taken a position on a high ridge overlooking the camp. The human sniper was part of Dawn's squad, and his reputation for impossible shots was well earned. He scanned the horizon through his scope, watching for threats. He spotted them a kilometer away. Kranathi patrol, but not Ralvik's group. These were moving differently, weapons ready, approaching from a blind angle to the camp. Sun Ho keyed his radio. Contact. Kranathi patrol. Possibly hostile. Approaching from the northeast ridge, 1 kilometer out. Rules of engagement. Tamman asked, watching them. They're moving tactical. I don't think they're friendly. The patrol leader was Krevel, a Kryathi wararchief who had heard rumors of humans but didn't believe them. He was approaching to capture one for interrogation. His sources said these humans were just a new species, trying to seem important by claiming to be legends. Kravel was studying his tactical display when one of his soldiers suddenly dropped, clean shot through the armor joint at the shoulder. Not fatal, but absolutely precise. Soldier was down and screaming before anyone registered what had happened. Sniper, someone yelled. Another shot. Another soldier down, hit in the leg joint. Kravel dove for cover, his mind's racing. That was over a kilometer. No species he knew could make accurate shots at that range, not with the wind, the terrain, the atmospheric conditions. His radio crackled. Somehow, impossibly. On his command frequency, a voice, speaking accented trade language. This is Sun Ho of Earth. You are approaching a protected zone. Turn back now. Next shots will not be warnings. Kravel looked at his tactical display. The sniper had to be on the far ridge. That was 1,200 m away, maybe more. The wind was strong and variable. The shots he had just made should have been impossible. How? He breathed into his radio. We're human, came the simple response. We do impossible things. Turn around. Kravel gave the order to retreat. His wounded soldiers were helped back and the patrol withdrew, but his mind was working. If humans could shoot like that, if they could coordinate defenses like this if they were even half as capable as the legend said. They represented a major shift in the balance of power. That night both Kranathi and Viosian commanders received the same message from their respective high commands. Full reports had reached the capitals. 3 centuries of legends and now proof. The humans had returned and they were everything the myths promised. Siren sat in her command tent reading the orders her superiors wanted. Alliance with the humans at any cost. The Kranathi Empire was surely receiving similar orders. A race was beginning to win human favor. She looked at the surveillance footage again. Watched Taemin lifting a grown Viosian like the alien weighed nothing. Watched the humans move with that fluid, predatory grace. Watched Sun Ho make shots that her best snipers said were flatly impossible. The myths didn't do them justice. She said quietly to her aide, they're more dangerous than the story said, but maybe that's what this war needs, something to break the stalemate. In the human camp, Taemin gathered his officers, both squads together now, 24 humans total, a tiny force in a galactic war. We've got a decision to make, he said. Both sides want us to take sides. Both sides are offering us anything we want, but Minso has been analyzing the situation. Tell them what you found. Minso stood. This war has been going on for 300 years. Millions of casualties. All over resource rights on about 40 contested worlds. Neither side can win. Neither side can afford to lose. It's just endless grinding combat. So what do we do? Dawn asked. We change the rules. Taemin said, we're human. We're supposed to be impossible. Let's live up to that reputation. Attack came 3 nights later without warning. Venar led his elite force, personally convinced that the humans were an elaborate hoax. The warlord had built his reputation on brutal efficiency, and he wasn't about to let myths and legends dictate strategy. There are no humans, he had told his officers, just some new mercenary species trying to trade on old stories. We take them alive, prove their frauds, and use them as leverage against both the Kranathi and Viosians. His force of 200 veteran soldiers hit the refugee camp at midnight. The camp now held not just the rescued civilians, but several dozen Kryathi and Viosian soldiers who had declared temporary troops to protect the non-combatants, and 24 humans. The first wave of plasma fire lit up the night. Explosions tore through the outer defensive positions. Venar's troops advanced in disciplined formation, expecting quick victory. They got something else entirely. Yanwu was awake when the attack started. The human demolitions expert had spent the last 2 days setting up defensive positions that looked simple but were actually mathematical death traps. As the enemy forces advanced, she triggered the first sequence. Explosions rippled through the attacking line, but not random. Channel directed. The blasts funneled the attackers into kill zones where overlapping fields of fire could cut them down. Venar's troops suddenly found themselves forced into narrow approaches where their numbers became a disadvantage. What kind of defensive engineering is this? One of his lieutenants shouted over the chaos. Taemin stood at the central defensive position, calm despite the fire and explosions around him. All squads execute defense pattern Alpha. Make every shot count. Conserve ammunition. The humans moved to their positions with practiced efficiency. Dawn took the northern approach with her squad. Sun Ho found an elevated position and began picking off enemy leaders with impossible precision. Dong Haiyan, their close-quarters specialist, grabbed his combat blade and moved toward the eastern breach, the first of Venar's soldiers to reach. Dong Haiyan learned what close combat with a human meant. The alien was larger, had better armor, and was armed with energy weapons. Dong Haiyan had a knife in his bare hands. Fight lasted 4 seconds. The alien went down hard, its armor cracked, its weapon in Dong Haiyan and LT Unk and GTS hands contact. Eastern breach. Dong Hun reported calmly, they really don't like getting hit. More enemies poured in. Dong Hun moved like water, every motion efficient and brutal. He didn't fight fair, he fought to win. Throat strikes, joint breaks, using the enemy's own weapons against them. Within minutes, the eastern breach was clogged with wounded attackers trying to retreat. Jiu worked frantically in the medical station. Wounded kept coming in, both alien allies and injured civilians. She moved between patients with practice deficiency, her hands steady even as explosions shook the building. This one needs immediate surgery or he'll die, she told her assistants, pointing to a Kryathi soldier with a severe chest wound. But you've been working for 4 hours straight, one of the Velone medical staff said. You need rest, ask. I'll rest when people stop bleeding, Jiu replied, already moving to the next patient. The Velocian watched in amazement as Jiu continued working hour after hour with no sign of slowing down. The human's endurance was beyond anything she'd seen before. On the battlefield, Haiyan Wu had set up his heavy weapon at a choke point. The weapon was designed for vehicle mounting, too heavy for most species to carry. Haiyan Wu had been walking around with it like it was a rifle. Now he put it to use, laying down suppressing fire that kept entire sections of the enemy force pinned down. Ravk fought beside him, marveling at how the human never seemed to tire. They had been fighting for 6 hours. Rav's arms ocked, his breathing was labored. Han Wu looked fresh, alert, ready for another 6 hours if needed. How? RVC gasped during a brief lull in the fighting. How are you not exhausted? Haiyan Wu smiled grimly. We're built for endurance. On Earth, humans used to hunt by just following prey until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. We can keep going long after everything else stops. That's terrifying. Yeah, Haiyan Wu agreed, then opened fire again as another wave approached. Venar watched his attack fall apart in real time. His elite troops were being systematically dismantled by a force a tenth their size. The defensive positions were perfect. The humans never missed. They never seemed to tire. They coordinated like they shared one mind. And when his troops got close enough for hand-to-hand combat, they found that fighting a human up close was suicide. The strength, the speed, the absolute ruthless efficiency, it was beyond anything in his experience. Fall back, he finally ordered. Retreat. But retreating was harder than attacking. Sun Ho and LT Unk and GT's sniper fire picked off anyone who turned to run. Yan Wu and LT Unk and GT's demolitions made the withdrawal paths into nightmares. By the time Venar's forces had disengaged, he had lost over half his troops. The warlord was captured trying to reorganize his forces. When Venar looked up to see humans surrounding him, weapons trained On his head, he finally understood. You're real, he said in trade. Language, the humans are real, Tammin. Stepped forward, we're real and we're done with this war destroying innocent lives. Venar was brought back to the camp. He saw the defensive positions, the wounded being treated without discrimination, the efficient organization. He saw Jai Wu still working in the medical tent after 18 straight hours. He saw Dong Hun cleaning his blade, barely winded despite hours of intense combat. How many of you are there? Venar asked Tammin. On this planet, 24. 24, the warlord repeated. 24 of you held off 200 of my best soldiers. Your soldiers were excellent, Tae Min said. Honestly, but they weren't fighting for anything except victory. We were fighting to protect civilians. That makes a difference. Venar's capture was recorded. The footage spread through military networks at light speed. Both the Kranathi Empire and the Velian Republic saw the same thing. Humans in combat. Real, undeniable. More capable than the legends suggested. Within hours, galactic news networks picked up the story. 300 years of myths and legends, and suddenly there was proof, video footage of humans moving with impossible speed, of humans fighting for 18 hours straight without rest, of humans lifting fallen defenders to safety like they weighed nothing. The broadcast spread across civilized space. The humans have returned became the headline on every major news service. Speculation exploded about what this meant for galactic politics, for the war for the balance of power. Sir Anon received direct orders from her government, full alliance with humans. Whatever they want, whatever it takes. The Kranathi High Command sent identical orders to their forces. In the human camp, Tam stood with Dawn and watched the sun rise over Von Prime. They had survived the night. 24 humans had changed everything. Communications are getting stronger, Dawn reported. Jae Sung says we should be able to reach Earth's colonial network within a day or two. Good, Tammin said. Because we're about to have every government in the galaxy trying to negotiate with us. What do we tell them? Tammin was quiet for a moment, watching the smoke clear from the battlefield. We tell them the truth. We're human. We don't want war, but we won't stand by while civilians suffer, and if they want our help ending this conflict, they're going to have to actually want peace. The galaxy had rediscovered humans. Now it would learn what that really meant. The communications breakthrough came on the 7th day. Jung had worked himself to exhaustion, rebuilding the array, and finally managed to establish a stable connection to the human colonial network. The response he received shocked everyone. They already know about us, he told Tammin, his hands shaking slightly as he held the data pad. The whole galaxy knows. The news networks have been broadcasting our fight for 3 days straight. Earth's colonial administration has been trying to reach us, and there's something else. What? One of our colony ships is nearby. The Busausen promise. She was in stasis orbit 3 systems away. They're waking the crew now and heading here. Dawn looked at Tammin. How long until they arrive? 4 days at best speed. Among those waking from stasis was Ambassador Hwan, a senior member of Earth's diplomatic corps. She had been in suspended animation for over a century, part of a long-term colony mission. When she woke and received the briefings about what had happened, she immediately took charge. Open a channel to the Cryathi and Viosian commands, she ordered her staff. Tell them I'm authorized to negotiate on behalf of humanity, and tell them both that if they want human friendship, they'll meet me at neutral ground for peace talks. The response was immediate. Both empires sent high-level delegations. The meeting was set for Warzone Prime at the camp where humans had made their stand. The day of the negotiations, the camp was transformed. Temporary structures had been built for the talks. Security was tight with human Cranathi and Viosian forces all working together to ensure safety. It was the first time in 300 years that this many leaders from both sides had been in the same place without shooting at each other. The Council of Six arrived. 3 representatives from the Cranathi Empire and 3 from the Viosian Republic. They were the highest ranking officials who could travel this far on short notice. They came expecting to negotiate with a small group of stranded humans. What they found was Ambassador H1, backed by evidence that humanity's colonial network included dozens of worlds and multiple military fleets. The humans weren't lost stragglers, they were the advanced scouts of a returning power. Welcome, H1 said in perfect trade language. She was a small woman by human standards, barely taller than most Elosians, but she carried herself with absolute confidence. I understand you've been at war for 3 centuries. Shall we discuss ending it? The Cranathi senior counselor, a 4-armed veteran named Talvin, spoke first. With respect, Ambassador, this conflict has deep roots, resources, territory, historical grievances. It cannot simply be ended because humans have appeared, can't it? Owen asked. You've been fighting over 40 contested worlds for 300 years, millions dead, economies wrecked, entire generations who have known nothing but war. And for what? Resources you could trade for peacefully, territory neither of you can fully control, pride that has cost you everything. Suranan, representing the Viosians, leaned forward. We would make peace if we could trust the Cranathi to honor it, but 3 centuries of broken trusts have taught us that peace with them is impossible. The same could be said of the Velians, Talvin countered. H1 held up her hand. Then let me offer something new. Human guarantees we will enforce the peace. Any violation by either side will face human response. Not as conquerors, not as overlords, but as peacekeepers. You would threaten us? A Velian counselor asked. No, H1 said calmly. I'm offering you a way out of this war that lets both sides keep their dignity. You've both seen what 24 humans could do. Imagine what a human fleet could do if we chose to intervene militarily. But we don't want war, we want stability, and you both need peace. Room fell silent. Everyone had seen the broadcasts. 24 humans holding off hundreds of elite soldiers, fighting for 18 hours straight, moving with impossible speed and strength. The implied threat was clear. What are your terms? Talvin finally asked. Simple, Hay replied. Immediate ceasefire on all 40 contested worlds, neutral human observers stationed to verify compliance, trade agreements to replace resource conflicts, a joint commission to address historical grievances, and most importantly, both sides agree to respect civilian populations and treat prisoners humanely. End quote. And if we refuse, Suranan asked quietly, then we leave you to your war, H1 said, and humanity remembers who chose continued conflict over peace when we had offered to help. Tammin watched the negotiations from outside the main chamber. Ralvik stood beside him, both of them armed but hoping they wouldn't be needed. Will it work? Ralvik asked. Can peace really come from this? I don't know, Tammin admitted, but it's a better chance than they've had in centuries. Sometimes it takes an outside force to break a deadlock. Inside, the debate continued. For hours, the council members argued, negotiated, made counter-offers, but slowly the shape of an agreement emerged. The Velians would maintain control of certain systems. The Kranathi would gain access to key resources in others. Trade corridors would be established. Human observers would be stationed on each contested world with the authority to intervene if either side violated the ceasefire. As the sun set, Hwan presented the final document, the Varan Accord, named for the world where it was signed. Both sides would have to ratify it through their governments, but the framework was there. We're not asking you to love each other, H1 said. We're not even asking you to forgive 300 years of war. We're just asking you to stop killing each other long enough to remember that there's more to existence than conflict. Talvin looked at Surin. Across the table, two representatives of empires that had been killing each other for longer than most species recorded history. Slowly, he extended one of his four hands. For peace, he said in trade language. Suranan hesitated, then reached out and clasped his hand. For peace. The room erupted in quiet celebration, not cheering because the wounds were too deep for that, but relief, exhaustion, the cautious hope that maybe finally the killing could stop. News of the accord spread across the galaxy at light speed. The humans had not only returned, but had ended the longest war in modern history within days of making contact. The implications were staggering in the following weeks as the details were hammered out and ratifications came through. Both empires made offers to the humans: trade agreements, military alliances, territory, wealth, anything to secure human friendship. Tammin's squad was offered commissions in multiple military forces, medals, land titles. They declined all. We're not conquerors, Tammin told the assembled diplomats. We're colonists who got lost and tried to do the right thing. The galaxy doesn't need human overlords. It needs to learn to solve its own problems. But they did accept one thing: a permanent human presence on Varan Prime, as a symbol of the peace and as a reminder of what had been achieved. The camp where they had made their stand became the headquarters for human observers. Throughout the contested zones, Ralvik requested and received permission to join the first cultural exchange program. To Earth, I told stories about humans my whole life, he explained. Siren, in a private meeting with Hwan, admitted something that surprised the ambassador. We were terrified of humans returning. The legends made you sound like unstoppable warriors who would conquer everything. And now, Hay asked, now I understand the legends were incomplete. Yes, you're warriors. Yes, you're incredibly dangerous, but you're also healers, negotiators, and protectors. The myths didn't mention that humans fight hardest when they're defending others. On the day the Busausen Promise entered orbit, bringing thousands more humans to Varan Prime, Tam stood with his squad and watched the ship descend. They had survived. They had made first contact. They had changed the course of galactic history. Think. They'll write legends about us, Hai and Wu asked with a grin. They already have, Jai. Wu said, pointing to a group of alien children watching the human camp with wide eyes. Look at how they stare at us. We're an LT, UNC, and GT, the myths that came to life. Then let's be good myths, Dawn said. Kind that inspire people to be better, not just stronger. The colony ships began arriving over the following months. Human settlements spread across the contested zones, neutral ground where both former enemies could meet and trade. The humans brought technology, trade goods, and something the galaxy had forgotten: a perspective from outside the conflict. Years later, historians would mark the arrival of the human survivors on Warzone Prime as the beginning of the Second Contact era, the day when humanity thought lost to legend returned and changed everything. But for Tammin and his squad, standing on that cliff, watching the sun set over a finally peaceful world, the moment was simpler. They had been lost. They had found themselves in a war zone. And they had done what humans do best. They had adapted, improvised, and refused to give up. They said humans were only myths, Tammin said quietly to his squad. Maybe that's what we needed to be until the galaxy needed us to be real. Behind them, the camp bustled with activity. Humans, Kryathi, Velians, and dozens of other species working together, building something new, creating peace from war. The humans had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same.